Welcome to Tableau. Today's training is going to cover how to analyze sales data in Tableau. There's another on-demand training covering how to connect to Salesforce.com data. I would encourage you to check out that as well. But today we're specifically going to be getting into the tool and discussing how we might use Tableau to analyze our sales data, and we'll show you some views that we use here at Tableau to analyze our own Salesforce data. So first we're going to be covering how to build out trends, modeling how the business has fared over specific years, months, and even quarters to get a sense of how the sales are trending. We'll discuss how you might view and break down sales reps' amount sold versus transactions. We'll show how to model crosstab detail for each account. And we'll get into an advanced example of how to craft a KPI for sales data and show how you might use that to call out specific areas of the business or sales reps that are doing particularly well versus others that you might need to follow up on. And then lastly, we'll conclude with a specific visualization that we use here at Tableau and might be quite useful to any sales organization of how to break down the relationship between time spent and resources allocated towards opportunities versus the amount you're actually selling. So this is showing me across all the regions the relationships for every sales rep of how much time they are spending for the amount that they are selling. So I can see outliers here, a rep like Gordon Brandt that has sold a tremendous amount versus others who have spent that same amount of time towards the same sales opportunities. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it and connect to our data and start building. So first off, the first visualization we're going to build out answers the question of how are the sales trending, or how have we fared versus the historical business. And to see that, we just need to jump right into it and view how our top line growth looks. We can grab sales and bring that out to the row shelf, drop it there, and we get a quick sense of how sales have fared overall across all of the data we have here. We might break this down over time, so we'll bring order date. And we can see year to year how the sales have trended. Might drill into this, see quarter to quarter as well. We could even move these fields around. So maybe take the year field and place it on color here. So now we can see that seasonality year to year and get a sense of how we're faring for not just prior years, but the current year versus all of the previous years and how we're trending for that seasonality. Now just to pause for a moment, I'll highlight how this technology is actually working here in Tableau, because this is a feature that is quite powerful versus a lot of other spreadsheet tools out there that you might be accustomed to. If we look at the underlying data, which we can find the view data option here in the top left of the tool, we can select that and we'll get a snapshot of exactly what the table structure looks like for our underlying data. If we actually see here right off the bat, order date is simply nothing more than a month/day/year timestamp column. We don't have separate columns broken out for quarter and year and month and so forth. Yet you can see that we can quickly model this in a number of different ways. So we might want to see those discrete quarters, or perhaps maybe even a continuous month range. Might slice and dice this by region, see how this breaks down, or maybe even by product department instead. And we can keep swapping fields out and see that data aggregated and rolled up to really whatever date level we specify, no matter how granular the option is available to us. So a very powerful feature in Tableau, especially for analyzing historical trends and seeing how the sales have fared and how we might be doing this quarter versus previous ones. And just to add a little bit to this, I want to discuss ways that we can dissect this and drill into it further. So this is a great breakdown here, viewing the product department sales across all of the months that we have data for to see how that has trended overall. But we might want to drill into this by a specific date range or even a relative time period. That is another powerful feature in Tableau. We can see here that we come up to our order date field, select that, and just simply drag it onto our filter shelf. We'll have a few different options populate. We can select any of those different date parts that we discussed and how Tableau aggregates the data automatically in a variety of ways that are useful to someone viewing those time trends. But we also have two more options here. We see this range of dates filter. We can select that and define a specific range, and maybe even allow other users logging in and viewing the same dashboard or worksheet to modify this in some way. So while I'm concerned with August 31st, 2010 to the end of this data set, someone else might want to narrow this down to a smaller range, and they can quickly make that change on the fly. And again, there wasn't any scripting or coding needed to break out all these different date parts or date ranges. Tableau automatically allows us to do this kind of functionality. Now, if I remove the order date field from the filter shelf, we can check out the other option that was available to us there when we dragged order date out onto the filter shelf. And that option was this relative date range, which is also quite useful, especially when you're forecasting or viewing sales trends on a financial schedule. Right, hit next, and maybe you're only curious relative to today for the last 3 quarters, or even the last 4 quarters. And you see all the options we have available to us here to filter this view down to the specific subset that we want to look at. We can apply this and view just the last 4 quarters in this case. Similarly to the last filter, we can also right-click on this one and show the quick filter for this as well. So any other coworker or client logging in and viewing this information can make the changes needed to see the view respect to them. So just a few ways we might drill into time series data here in Tableau. Now on this note of historical time trends, there's a few more things to be aware of. Beyond just filtering the data and viewing those historical trends, we could perform some calculations on it as well without having to even touch our keyboard. We might want to view just how this breaks down for the running total and the history of the business. You can come up here to the drop down for sales, choose quick table calculation, select something like running total. And now we see exactly that information broken down. Furthermore, we could see this maybe as percent difference month to month as opposed to the running total. All available to us in this drop down for quick table calculations, and we didn't have to perform any scripting or coding to manipulate this data in another spreadsheet tool before we can visualize it. It's all just point and click and done on the fly. So that really is the value of Tableau to viewing those historical trends and looking at something like sales over time. Beyond just viewing this broken down in the past, we can actually do some forecasting as well. So you may be curious how sales are trending. You might have different directors or managers who want to drill into the data and get a sense of how we're looking to turn out for sales over the next quarter or next month or so on and so forth. And we can do that as well by just point and click. If we build out a similar view with sales, and we're going to right-click drag order date onto the column shelf, and then we get to choose from all of the date parts we have available to us. We'll choose month. And if we want to get a quick sense of how this is trending and what the forecast looks like, Tableau does have exponential smoothing model forecast built in, where we can simply right-click and either show trend lines or also show that exact forecast. If we show the forecast, we get a clear sense of where that's headed in the short term and then also on a longer horizon as well. So it's a very useful feature that anyone of any skill level can do. Simply right-click and you can forecast how sales are trending. Now moving on, beyond just viewing how sales are trending, you're probably interested in what the breakdown is for all of the sales reps in your organization and how they're selling and how many transactions they're churning out. So we'll create a new sheet and we'll view exactly that. I'll take my sales information, drag that out onto the view. I can drop it either on the row shelf or even right here in the drop area. I view those sales overall again. And this time, instead of breaking this down by date to view the historical trends, we're going to break this down by sales rep. We'll drag that out to the column shelf, maybe even swap this view. We can quickly sort this and get a sense of who the high performers are. or even sort it the opposite direction and think about the people that we need to follow up on and provide some more coaching. Very quickly, we get that information right at our fingertips. Now, beyond just sales, we might be concerned with how many transactions are people selling. We can find that here if we scroll down on our list of measures to the number of records field. We can actually just drag that right out onto the view and let Tableau place that for us in a manner that it sees fit for best visual practice. Now, since we were already visualizing these bars' size, Tableau algorithmically deemed that the next best place to visualize an additional measure, in this case transactions for the number of records, was to color all of these bars, since we're already sizing them. We can move this from here, so if we wanted to see these bars placed side by side, that's available as well. See the numbers broken down for not just sales overall, but transactions closed. Maybe even sort this as well to see who those reps are that have a high number of transactions versus the ones that have a high number of sales. If we hover over any of these bars in particular, we can get all the underlying detail to see that raw list of transactions for that particular salesperson. Might be useful in following up and providing that coaching after viewing the information. So very quickly, just through a few drags and drops, we have that information at a high level of how our sales reps are doing, not just for sales, but for transactions as well. So the next step, taking this analysis probably to the next level, would be applying some sort of key performance indicators to this view. So we've got a sense of how we're doing at a high level. We might be concerned now with, are we hitting certain thresholds that management sets for the business of what is performing well and what isn't performing well. It's what we refer to as a KPI, a key performance indicator. So we'll showcase an example of that, and you can imagine in all the ways you might customize these KPIs for your own business. But one way that's often used is to break down whether or not sales reps are hitting their quotas. So we'll take that same view we were looking at of sales by sales rep, dragging these out onto our appropriate columns and rows shelves. Again, we can pivot this to view the list in long detail here. We can sort it in a variety of ways. And if we just want to see which sales reps have hit a particular quota, we can actually set a fictitious one in this example to show you how that might look with a KPI in Tableau. So oftentimes we would have a field beyond just sales in the same data source or another one that represents quota for each rep. And we would just drag that out onto the view and view it maybe as a bullet chart for whether or not sales reps have hit that specific mark for their quota. But we'll just assume in this case, for this fictitious example, that every sales rep has a flat quota across the entire business here, and we can set that with a reference line in Tableau. So we'll go ahead and right-click on our axis. We'll add a reference line. And we have a few different options here. We can add in reference lines showing the average or some other aggregation across the view. Or what we can do beyond that is add in a parameter that then could be customized, much like you saw that quick filter was customized by any user logging in. So if the quota was changing dynamically and we wanted to allow those different managers to log in and simply input the quota for their region or what they believe the quota should be, we can have that as a parameter and the KPI will update dynamically. So we'll create a new parameter here. We'll call this choose quota, and we'll set this as a range. If you want to know more about parameters, there is another video covering this functionality that I would encourage you to check out. There's also videos on logical statements and other calculations that you could use to craft these KPIs, so please do check out the other on-demand videos as well. And we'll set a range now that they could choose this quota from. And it looks like anything from 5,000 up to about 60,000 should cover most of the data we have here in this view. So we'll set that. And we'll maybe allow someone to drag this range by amounts of 5,000. Choose OK. We'll apply this. And now you see that we have this quota that we can change on the fly based on our parameter selection here. Be a great resource to have for the manager logging in and viewing this dashboard. Could be on just a quota, it could be some sort of business threshold that you like to hit, maybe an internal goal or a specific growth target. It can all be based on a parameter or even some fixed amount as well. So now really the next step to finalize this view and add in the KPI would be to create something that defines whether or not we've hit this quota. So it's just a simple logical statement actually. We can do that by coming over here to either one of the fields we'll be using in this, the sales or the quota, and just right click and create a calculated field. We'll call this our sales quota KPI. And we'll just define the logic as an if-then statement. We can see all the functions available to us here. We get instructions on how to write an if-then statement. It's very similar to a tool like Excel, where you just type in if a certain expression happens, then define what we want the result to be. And this is going to look something like this. Say if the sum of sales, which are each of those bars we're looking at in the view. Every one is an aggregate sum of sales per sales rep. If one of those is greater than the quota we set, well then we'll call that great. Else, not great. And we'll end that statement. And the calculation is valid, so now we can use this on the view. If we drag it out, maybe place it on the color shelf, we can quickly see blue bars for the reps who have hit that threshold and orange ones who haven't. So it gives us a quick sense right away of what areas do we need to focus on to improve and follow up with coaching, which ones are doing well and maybe deserve some kudos. And you can see that as we change this KPI, the colors change as well. So it's just a quick example of how you might use KPIs in Tableau. It's a very useful feature for creating these different views for a sales organization, because you want to know across the accounts, the opportunities, and the sales reps who are hitting those key business metrics and who do you need to follow up with to improve upon and make sure that we hit those going forward. So KPIs are a great resource for that. Now lastly, we'll do a few different examples here. We'll just do one quickly showing the detailed sheet of the sales reps and the transactions, and then another showing the breakdown of sales versus time spent for each of the reps. So going back to the sales transaction sheet here, we can touch on how we could turn this view very quickly into a detailed list per sales rep and per account of how we're trending for our activities. Any one of these views, we can just right click and select duplicate as a crosstab, and we have just the raw numbers view there. And if we wanted to see this broken down by something beyond just sales rep, maybe a more granular level of detail, we can double click a field like account ID, and now that's broken out as well. And we get all that information right here at our fingertips. And you certainly can add to this just like a pivot table and other tools where you double click on other fields and it builds out that cross-tabular view in whatever manner you see fit. We can drag and drop and pivot this around in a variety of ways, all very easy to do just to get those raw numbers. It's just something to be aware of as well that we might want to use when we wrap this up into a dashboard and have the details interact with the high-level visualizations when we drill into the dashboard. So we'll create that last sheet now, and then we'll just show an example of a few of these on a dashboard. The last example was just showing the relationship per sales rep of how we're doing for sales versus time spent. It's a very useful view for getting a sense of how we're spending resources as a company and who's doing a good job of that and who is not as efficient as maybe some others. So to do that, we'll just bring out the two metrics we're interested in. The first one is sales, the second one is time spent. And right away, again, those best visual practices that Tableau has knows that when we're creating a view such as this, we've got two axes that are measures here, so we're going to view this as a scatter plot. And right now it's just one mark overall for the entire business. So if we want to break this down by, say, sales reps, we can just grab that field and drag it out onto the view. And then we get that relationship of all of the sales reps. We can even right click, show trend lines, maybe focus in on the reps who are below that trend line that we need to follow up with. You can see one in particular here that has spent quite a bit of time relative to the amount they've sold. So it's just something to focus in on. Maybe even create a set out of these reps and say these are follow-up coaching salespeople. Very quick and easy way to drill into our business and understand how efficiently we're spending our time. And certainly this can be broken down by different areas as well. So if we wanted to view this by region, we can get a sense of that. We can quickly format this in a variety of ways so that maybe we view these with a little bit better transparency so we can see the cluster here at the bottom of the graph. Could even increase the size of these as well. The formatting is all very easy to do in Tableau. And now, once we have a handful of these sheets together and we're ready to craft a report to pass on to everyone else in our organization, it's just simply a matter of creating a dashboard. And that's just as easy as creating any one of these sheets. We choose our dashboard button, and now we can drag and drop those individual sheets onto one view. Maybe get the trends, we'll look at just the details, and maybe also that last view we created of the time spent versus sales for each sales rep. We'll size this so we can see it better, more appropriate for this particular instance. If we wanted to take out any one of these or resize a particular sheet, we can just click on that and choose whatever options we need to. In this case, we'll fit the width. Now we can just scroll down and see all of our details in respect to those overall trends, and then also this nice breakdown of how efficiently are we spending our time. So if we want to add in any interactivity to this, we can do a variety of things. One of them is just quickly turning on filters for each of the sheets. So if we choose that drop down, select Use as Filter. Now when we highlight some specific marks on this view, we get the trends in detail just respect to that. So just a quick example of how we would do that. If we wanted to add in any quick filters as well, that can also be accessed in that drop down. So maybe we choose on the sheet where we're looking at time trends, quick filters for a particular department, and we show just that. We can apply this across everything in the view by doing another drop down, apply to all using this data source. And now when we make these different selections, we see all of the views change to reflect just that. So there is start to finish some great quick examples of how you might use Tableau to build out some views into your sales business and get a sense of how you're doing overall. This gives you a little bit of insight into how we use the tool here at Tableau. Every day, managers and every employee across every organization in Tableau are using this to better perform in their jobs. So it really is a great tool, not just for retail data or specific industries, but any department you have as well. So check out the Salesforce.com connector video and check out other resources we have on our website as well, and give Tableau a shot for analyzing your sales data, because it really can be a great tool for driving performance in the business. Thank you.